Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to welcome you all back to yet another amazing episode of the Alchemy Lab. I've been so excited today, waiting to introduce my next guest in the Alchemy Lab. For those of you not familiar, what does he mean, the Alchemy Lab? Well, my name's Colm Holland, and the reason we call this podcast the Alchemy Lab is because I'm the author of this book called The Secret of the Alchemist by Colm Holland. And this book is all about another book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, hence this entire metaphor that we're living in, called The Alchemy Lab. And the key theme that runs through this episode today and runs through all of our episodes is that of personal transformation. So everybody I have as a guest on the show has been through at some point in their life, some significant transformative experience, which has led to the amazing things that they're doing today. And my guest today is no exception to that. And I'd like to welcome Ben Ivey. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Colin. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you're a CEO, which sounds really important. I wish I was a CEO. You're a CEO of a business that you own called Entrepreneur Lifestyle, correct?
Yes.
And as part of that, you are an international speaker and also a mentor, and you specialize in helping overwhelmed entrepreneurs. Now, I've never been an overwhelmed entrepreneur. I nearly didn't have a nervous breakdown for the pressure of being an entrepreneur. I have no idea what you're talking about, to the point that my wife used to have to send me emails and say, oh, can we have a meeting? I know how busy you are. Oh, I never used to have to spend all night at the office and never go home and get breakfast from McDonald's in the morning. And no, I don't know anything about any of this at all. To the point that I actually said enough is enough, and I sold my share in my business to my colleagues in the entrepreneur. I've been one of those overwhelmed entrepreneurs for sure, and I'm sure there are going to be listeners here today and viewers who I can identify with that experience. So, was that you, Ben? Have you been one of these overwhelmed entrepreneurs? Is that what got you started down this road?
Yeah, most certainly. I think that being an entrepreneur and dealing with overwhelm, I think they certainly come hand in hand, especially when you start out and you're attempting to manage everything in the business, being the jack of all trades. I think it's very easy to be overwhelmed, especially nowadays where we are in an information overload and we're starving of wisdom. And I think it's so easy to be pulled in so many different directions as an entrepreneur as you attempt to build your business. So I've certainly experienced this myself, and I still do from time to time. It's not something that just goes away. The difference now is that I have the tools to be able to deal with it so it doesn't start to be detrimental to me and my business.
Okay. So we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm glad that this is coming from your own personal experience. Tell us just a little bit about your career life story up to this point. What kind of business were you in? What were you doing before that? And why did you make the switch to becoming a speaker and a mentor to entrepreneurs rather? I mean, can I just say, you look far too young, Ben, to be...
It's all this face cream I use.
I made the mistake of not being an entrepreneur until I was nearly 45 years old. So maybe, I was at a disadvantage straight away. I should have just done it when I was so much younger, but I guess you did begin a bit younger than me.
Yeah, a little younger. I mean,
yeah.
I think I started my entrepreneurial journey at school where I was selling chocolate. I managed to find Freddo boxes. I remember this very well. They had 40 Freddos.
Freddo, they're my favorites.
Oh yeah, they were great. I'd buy it for £4, 10p a piece, and I'd sell them on for 20p. Yeah, that's a pretty good markup, 50%.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, that business got closed down when they found so many pounds in my locker. They were just falling out with all my Freddos and chocolate and Lucozades. So unfortunately, that was my first shutdown of the business, learning to abide by rules and regulations. And then my entrepreneurial journey started, and I had a few different projects. I did young enterprise at school, looking into selling pajamas and things like that. But it wasn't until university that I started to build a proper business where I was selling sports bags around the UK. So that was the first business that I had. I started to run that. I was importing bags from Pakistan, from China, from different places. And then I ended up moving into my next business, which was looking into a virtual reality app to help people learn. And it was using the same techniques people use to memorize cards, whereby you create a memory palace and you have images associated with different cards to be able to move forward. And we were basically gamifying that. It was amazing. I was based in Silicon Valley. I was with my team, and I was someone that was incredibly focused on being a multimillionaire, but honing on the business, and definitely have my priorities in a twist. I remember actually being there on the weekend working and seeing other people taking a day off. And Colm, I genuinely remember looking at people thinking they're lazy. How could these lazy entrepreneurs take a day off? Who do they think they are? They're building a business, right?
Yeah, I know all about that. Yeah.
And I was certainly all about the hustle. And it was this experience of wanting to hustle and build a business. And I barely gave myself enough time to go to the gym. And when my business partner was surprised when I told him that we've got to keep working on Sunday and keep going, it was a very troubling experience. And then I had an opportunity to see one of my heroes, and I was incredibly excited. And I remember getting into my car and driving as fast as I could, because as I'm sure it's happened to you before, sometimes when you have an important meeting, you're getting ready and forget the time. Unfortunately, that was one of those days. And I was flying as quickly as I could. And I remember going up to a restaurant, and the door was similar to Hogwarts. Right? I'm not sure if any of your viewers have seen Harry Potter, but there's like a huge door, and I had to open it with both hands. And as I went in, I finally saw my hero. He was about 6'5", like huge, massive head, huge teeth, and a tiny little bit of tuft of hair on his head. And we had the most amazing conversation for 2 hours. And for those listening, I want you to imagine if you had the opportunity to see one of your heroes or someone that you truly admire, how that would make you feel. But actually, the very next day, something strange happened. Because what I didn't know is that that would be one of the last times that I would ever see that hero. Because the very next day, my hero committed suicide.
Oh.
And that completely shifted my world of
Wow,
what I was
Ben.
doing.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you'd been with me a week later, you'd have found me sitting on a bench. And it was a beautiful blue sky outside, but this was in complete contrast to what was going on inside of me and inside of my mind. And I remember sitting in a cold, dark room and knowing that I had to do a speech that I really didn't want to give. I remember staring out into a sea of faces, all of Mark's family and friends, hoping there was something that I could say that could make them feel better about the situation.
Wow.
And for those listening, if you can imagine losing someone like that who you really care about, it was an incredible, life-changing moment, because the truth is that hero was more than just a hero to me. He was actually family to me. It was actually my dad, and I saw him the day before, and I had absolutely no idea what was happening. And it was that took me on my journey and my personal journey of transformation, where I quit my business in Silicon Valley and I started to go on this journey of why do we do what we do? I wanted to know what happened to my dad, and I wanted to figure out if he was the only one that struggled with these parallel worlds that we often create.
Wow, Ben, that's heartbreaking to hear that. I've got a few questions, if I may, just delve a little bit further. That drive that made you work 7 days a week without taking a breath, did you ever analyze, were you ever able to self-analyze that, what that drive was? What do you know what that was that made you, I mean, ambition's great. I'm not knocking ambition at all. I've got tons of ambition. I love it, and everybody should have it for sure. But there are times when ambition morphs into compulsion. What was it that was driving you, do you think?
Well, I think there was a combination of factors. I think one of the elements was when my parents got divorced when I was 15, and I decided that I would have to be the man of the house, or I had to, step into that role as the eldest. And it was then that I started to take responsibility for everything that I was doing, as opposed to people putting pressure on me. I'd start to put pressure on myself. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to be able to achieve, to then be able to inspire others. And I got into this, what I tell people now as the when I have this, then I will addiction. And for me, it was when I have success, then I will be able to inspire people.
Okay.
And I always felt that there was this prerequisite that I had to achieve in order to be able to help others.
Right.
So there was this battle going back and forth, and it was this drive to achieve in order to be able to help others.
Yeah. Okay, I identify with that for sure. So your dad was your hero. In what sense was this a hero because you wanted to emulate him? Was he the hero to you because he wasn't there? Was he there, after 15?
Sure.
Yeah. What was that about?
Sure. Well, for me, I found him an incredibly inspiring person in that he was quite a character, someone that could go into a room and just make everyone laugh. He would be absolutely ridiculous. I remember him, walking out of a toilet with toilet paper wrapped around his head, pretending to be the Invisible Man. He was really an outrageous, ridiculous individual. And for me, I found it fantastic that no matter where he went, he was always giving. And when I think of what happened to Robin Williams, and I think of the journey that he went on, I very much think of my dad as that sort of incredibly funny character that a lot of people look up to and admire. So when that happened, I really thought it was this deja vu moment of, I can't believe that something like that is happening to, once again, such an inspiring individual to so many people around the world.
So that was a pivotal moment. That was a transformative moment. So what do you believe the shift was in your psyche then, following that incident? Is that the incident that you attribute to where you are today? Was it a new reckoning within your life, a new reassessment?
Well, I think whenever a major shift like that happens in anyone's life, there's this reckoning and this shift of working out, what is it that matters to me and what am I going to do with what's happened? I think that whenever we lose someone close to us, that happens, especially in my case where it was perhaps more extreme circumstances. And for me, that journey has unfolded, and I think that it was certainly paramount in importance to changing the trajectory of where I was going. I think ultimately I wanted to be able to inspire people, but it got rid of this prerequisite that I felt like I had to do something in order to inspire people. And instead I went ahead and started to go on that journey. And one of the ways in which I dealt with it, perhaps in a negative way, was being able to create this, using a metaphor, perhaps a castle around myself, or a fortress, and not really letting anyone in because I was afraid of being hurt. And I think that
Sure.
certainly stayed with me for a few years afterwards, where I didn't want to let people in, and I was strong for other people, but didn't allow other people to be there for me, very much the strong, independent individual. And I was still helping people, but I felt that there wasn't that depth that I could connect with people on a different level, because I didn't have that vulnerability to be able to open up in a different way.
So I talk a lot about vulnerability, especially in my book. And I have this philosophy that our vulnerability is our greatest treasure. And that when we're prepared to let down the defenses of that castle, that's when our treasure is able to be manifest in a way. So you must have gone through some inspirational moment or over a period of time, that because what the person we see, the Ben we see now, is obviously vulnerable and open and giving. So what happened there?
Sure. Well, as I was starting to help people from all walks of life, and I was in China, I was teaching NLP, I was helping people left, right, and center, I really did feel like I lacked this connection, and I found it difficult to empathize truly with what people were going through.
Right.
So one of the things that I wanted to do was to start to go to events to open up. And one of the ones that was most paramount for me was going to one of Tony Robbins' events, Unleash the Power Within.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, I went with the intention of being able to open up. And as I walked across the hot coals, that was the metaphor to be able to open up emotionally and to connect with people on a different level. And literally from that event, I started to connect with people differently. And I think it was within the next few weeks, I then found my wife who's basically been with me ever since. And I think that it was very paramount for me into establishing that deeper connection with other people.
Was there anything specifically that Tony Robbins said, or was there one particular principle that he managed to bring home to you during that time that stayed with you?
I think that for me, when I look into what was driving me, and I think about significance and growth using the framework of the six human needs that Tony talks about, or we could look into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think ultimately it was looking into this uniqueness and growth that was driving me. And I switched that to contribution and love. And as I did that, I think that the shift in what I valued, how I approached people was different. And that allowed me to connect with people on a different level. And I think that often it's an instrumental moment that allows you to make a decision, but then it's reinforced by actions. And I think really it was those actions that I took after that that were reinforced by the intention as to why I was there that really enabled me to integrate that as part of my psyche and about who I now represented as a human.
Wow. So quite a journey, in other words, to get to this point. I'm sorry it's been so traumatic at times, but I guess for all of us, there are going to be those moments, and we're going to bring those moments to our plans and ambitions. So let's talk about entrepreneurs for a moment then. When you're helping entrepreneurs, why do they come to you in the first place? What is it they're hoping to achieve, do you believe?
Well, I think in many cases, people come to me when they realize that the business that they thought they wanted isn't the business that they're running now. And very much for me, it's helping them live the lifestyle they thought they would have when they started their business.
Yeah.
And it's creating this new awareness, new principles, new systems, just to allow someone to not only be successful in business, but to actually enjoy that journey. And I think that there's so many entrepreneurs who are hustling and working incredibly hard. And by no means am I saying that you don't work hard as an entrepreneur, but I see a lot of people being busy as opposed to being productive. And I think that it's that differential that really allows me to have a huge impact where people can see the difference that you can make in your business by taking time off, really allowing yourself to think, and by working on that business as opposed to in that business. And I'm sure you've had a wealth of experience there in preaching to the choir, but I really do find that a lot of people that come to me have reached this business plateau, or they're stuck, or they just feel like this grind is going on and they're not sure where to turn. And very often that's when someone is referred to me or someone reaches out, and then I share with them what I think is right for them to be able to move forward.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'm going to completely change the subject just for a moment. I talk a lot about, in my book, based on the philosophies of Carl Jung, and also the original book that I published, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And one of the key themes that comes from the whole concept of the hero's journey, which is a metaphor for that inner journey to find that true empowerment that we all seek. It has to do with omens and synchronicity. Now, I remember the early days of my first entrepreneurial exercise. It wasn't chocolate, by the way, in school. Although that was a great idea. I wish I'd thought of that one. We do find, in my experience, that when you're on a particular track and you just have this knowing that it's the right track, stuff happens. In my case, doors open, coincidences occur, meaningful events take place that act like little messengers. Yes, carry on. This is the way you should be going. Yeah, follow this route. And when that stuff's, in my experience of my life, I've made the decision that when that stuff's not happening, or it's happening to me in a particularly negative way, I take that as a message from the universe, if you like, that, well, actually, maybe this isn't quite the way that you should be going. Have you experienced anything like that in your entrepreneurial career?
Well, I think that when we look for something, we see more of it. And very often I use an exercise in my workshops where I have everyone close their eyes and to have a little competition of counting everything that's red in the room when they open their eyes. So everyone opens up and they're there and they're counting everything that's red. It's a competition. Some people get 11, some people get 12. And usually when I ask them to point out everything, they show me some red, sometimes they show me brown, sometimes orange, but suddenly they see different colors because they're searching for that red, but even though it's not that color, they think it is.
Mm.
And I think very often there's that bias that we have of when we look to buying a car, suddenly we see more of that car. When we want more opportunities, we see more opportunities. So I think there's one element there that when we're on that journey, suddenly things become much more apparent to us that weren't there before because we're looking for things that are different. We're looking for those opportunities. And that's often where someone will say, oh, yeah, that person was so lucky, but yeah, are they lucky or are they looking for the right thing? So on one element, I really think that it's this, what are you looking for? And that is what you will see more of in your life. Now, on the flip side of things, there's also this synchronicity and how much of it is being able to be drawn in the right direction despite what you're looking for. And I think that when I look into my life, I think that there have been many signs that some point as luck. I think I'm incredibly lucky with some of what's happened in my life, but I think ultimately it's finding those moments. And I think when I first went to China, I was looking for somewhere to stay, and I found someone who was a master NLP practitioner. And I thought, oh, what an amazing opportunity. I could go live with him for 4 months, model what he does, learn NLP, and to be able to utilize all his knowledge. And I thought that was a fantastic sign. And I think that another one, which is perhaps slightly different, is that I was originally meant to do a TED talk 4 years ago in Chinese. And the day before, it got cancelled by the Chinese government. All the TED talks got cancelled. And it was that moment where I was thinking, oh, is this the right thing? Is this a sign? Blah, blah, blah. And I remember my girlfriend at the time, now wife, said to me, maybe this is a sign that you're meant to do it on a topic that is deeper and more vulnerable and more powerful. And 3 years later, I did my TED Talks. That was last year. And I did it in Chinese. It was my story. It was incredibly powerful. It was much more impactful than the one I would have done previously. And I think that when we look into Steve Jobs, we join the dots later in life. I think that was certainly one of those elements there. So for me, when I think of the opportunities, the people that I've met, everything that I've learned, I think that there is certainly that reinforcement that we're heading in the right direction. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. And I think that there's that combination of both the universe working for us and allowing us to head in the right direction. And what we see more of is what we get. Now, the final element that you mentioned is when you're knowing where you're going, you're heading in the right direction, the universe is working for you, and then suddenly the universe is working against you. And I think in those times, really, there's a few ways in which you can take it. And you mentioned, maybe this is time for me to pivot, to switch. And sometimes for me, I feel that maybe this is a challenge or something for me to rise to. If this isn't working, okay, let's go. How badly do I want this? And sometimes I take that as a challenge to lean in. And there's other times where you say, okay, look, this isn't working. For example, COVID hits. All right, well, I guess I'm not doing any offline events. time to switch up. And I think that certainly for those listening, I think it's important to have that perspective and to allow different things in. And to me, I think that I feel incredibly blessed to be where I am, and I see the signs along the way. And I think that it's often those small things that we see that really, really help us. And there's a last thing that I'll share that I think is important, and it's that I consider myself, spiritual, and I wouldn't say I'm a spiritual person, but I'd consider myself spiritual. And whenever I see a white butterfly, for me, that's a reinforcement that I'm on the right journey. And sometimes in life, I'll be walking, I'll see them there, and I'm like, yes, we're heading in the right direction. I think that's a really fun one for me, that really allows me just to know that someone's looking out for me, they're there, and I'm heading in the right direction.
That's great. And we share something else in common now, which is that I also see white butterflies as a positive sign in my life too. So if we ever meet in the flesh one day and we both see the same white butterfly, we'll each take that as an omen for sure. So our listener is sitting at home or in the office or jogging or however he's listening or she is listening to this podcast, and they've been thinking about, taking the leap. They've been doing what they've been doing for some time. They're primarily working for other people or for someone, and there's this new deep dissatisfaction that's starting to bubble up that's saying, come on, take courage, take the risk, do this thing that you want to do. Don't worry about the risks at all. You're not going to have that wonderful steady income just coming into your bank account every month. You're not going to have that company car if that's what you've got. Suddenly all these things are just going to disappear. I mean, that's where I was 40 years ago, so I'm talking from experience. But that deep dissatisfaction that many of us feel, and where we say, I'm going to do it, but not yet. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to put it off. Maybe next year will be a better time. There's COVID going on. There's all these things. So what do you say to people who have that entrepreneurial spirit? And what you're going to say, by the way, we're going to bottle it here in the Alchemy Lab. Those that have got that entrepreneurial will and spirit, but are just fearful of making that final move forward, that step forward.
Sure. Well, I think that you're going to need a couple of bottles, because I'll answer this in a few different ways. and the reason why I say that is I think people have different perspectives. And for myself, I think there's a variety of ways in which to go about it. Now, some people will say, just do it, just quit, make the leap, screw everything, and you just got to go for it, burn your bridges and be an entrepreneur. And for some people, that works. It's a leap of faith. It's saying, you know what, I'm going to do this business, I'm going to burn my bridges, and I'm going to say, I'm going to make this happen. And for some people, that is the right course of action for them. And if that's you and you're listening, it's making that decision, and not just making it, but following through and taking action. And I see people from all over the world. I work with people that are doing working full time. They quit, and suddenly they're doing their business full time. They're loving it. And I think that's amazing. There's other people that will be listening to this thinking there's not a chance that I would ever do that. I'm not an idiot. I've got responsibilities. I've got bills. I have a family. I'm not just going to quit and then suddenly, once if it doesn't work, well, then I'm absolutely screwed in debt and then I'm in trouble. And for those people listening, I can certainly empathize. And I think that what's incredibly important is to build a safety net. And I've spoken to entrepreneurs on my podcast. I've spoken to people from all walks of life, and I've had clients, and I've told them very simply, what is it that you need to have saved up that would give you the cushion you need so that you can actually go full power and focus on the business? And I think that that's very important for people not to just think about, but to actually calculate so they can work it out. And for some people, it's 3 months. For some people, it's 6. I was chatting to a guy the other day. He was saying he needed a year. So he worked for a year, he built that up, and then he did it. And for some people, that's the smart, more intelligent way to do it, where they build that income and then they go build the business. The last bottle, this is bottle 3, so there's 3 doors in, is the people that say, okay, I want to start my business, and they build it part-time. And for example, I have a lady that's working with me. She's building up her coaching business, and she's also a detective. Right, really cool combo, I've got to say.
Oh, I love that. The kitchen detective, love it.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty fascinating. So she's a detective by day, coaching at night. Oh, well, actually, sometimes detective at night too, but pretty fascinating. And when I look into that, that's another way in which people like to do it. They like to have their income match from their business and then they move out of it. And the way they look at that is they invest the money that they're making into their business. And once again, they build it sustainably. So very broadly, I see these three different ways. And for those listening, it's working out what is right for you. And if you're still feeling unsure, I would say pick a bottle, make it happen, and then you'll get some feedback. And that feedback's either going to be this was the right decision, or it's the universe telling you you need to do a different way. But ultimately, when you have that fire and you know you want to do something different, the worst part is letting that fear control you. And I think that, as I'm sure you agree, it's very important to be courageous, and fear is that prerequisite to being courageous in your life. And ultimately, it's opening a bottle and then dipping into that fear, feeling it, and doing it anyway.
Got it. Fantastic. Okay, we've got 3 potions now that I didn't have before today, so that's brilliant. Great insights. We're almost out of time. I can't believe it. Time flies when you're enjoying yourself and listening to such wisdom from an entrepreneur like you. Have you got a quote or an inspirational thought or something you'd like us to take away today to meditate on? Ben, is there something you have to share?
Nope, nothing. No, I'm only joking.
You said it all. You've already said it all.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can quote me now. I think that one of the things that's coming up for me right now is that we work hard to enjoy life and make sure you enjoy it. And I see too many people now getting stressed out, working too hard and constantly on the grind and not really having fun. And for me, I really think that as a world, we need to have a lot more fun, to relax, to enjoy ourselves, because I think that's really where the spice of life is. It's enjoying that journey and not just focusing on the destination.
I'll agree with that. When I left my entrepreneurial business, I literally went on a gap year for the first time in my entire life. So I hadn't had enough fun, and I had allowed myself to become consumed by that. And so the first thing I did straight away after was I grabbed my family and we went and had a bunch of fun. And I actually haven't looked back from that. That is also my mantra.
Yes.
If you're not having fun, then what is it all about in the end?
Yeah.
So yeah. Ben, thanks so much for taking the time out today. So people need to find you. You have a podcast. Where can they find the podcast?
Sure. So they can find the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, just Entrepreneur Lifestyle with Ben Ivey, Ivey, and that'll come up. And that's a recent launch. And then they can connect with me on my website, so ben-ivey.com, so Ben and then a hyphen, ivey.com. And then they can connect with me on lots of social media. Just type in Ben Ivey, I'll come up. You can Google me and feel free to connect. I'm more than happy to share some resources to help you move forward.
Fabulous. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of people tapping you on the shoulder after this, because I think COVID has raised lots of unanswered questions right now for people who were probably making plans and have had to put those plans on hold. So great that we've got somebody like you around, Ben, to go and talk to, which is fabulous. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Ben Ivey, me, Colm Holland, wishing you a very entrepreneurial life ahead, and thanks again for listening. Cheers, everyone.